Hello and welcome to the Federal. You're watching our very special series of interviews to coincide with the centenary year of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh or the RSS. We have been having over the last few months, we have been having interviews with various scholars and eminent thinkers, journalists, writers, and a variety of other people looking at different aspects of the RSS. Today, we are going to be talking about Gandhi and the RSS. We are in the month of January, and the moment we are in the January month, how can we forget that it was in this month, 78 years ago, when Gandhi was assassinated by people who couldn't avoid their linkages with the RSS despite tremendous efforts by both the organization and the people. So we will be looking at the entire gamut of issues related to the equation, the relationship between Gandhi and RSS, their uh, divergences, all that issue. And to discuss that, who do I turn to but Tushar Gandhi, who is not only just a great grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, but is also been a very eminent voice in the civil society, somebody who's been, a very strong writer also, writing in various papers. He's written a very important book several years ago, Let's Kill Gandhi, which is considered to be possibly the finest compilation, documentation, and analysis of the process by which Gandhiji was assassinated. Welcome to this program, Tushar Gandhi, and thank you very much for sparing time to come and join us on this program
Thank
for
you
this
so much.
very important series.
Thank you so much.
Let me begin with the fact, that 1906, that's the time when Mahatma Gandhi, who is still not known as Mahatma, he meets the ideologue of the Hindu majoritarian movement, V D Savarkar, in London. That begins a 4 decade plus period, when they are in public spaces, in public society, taking various public positions, leading the national movement from the Gandhiji's side, and the Savarkar have sparking off the formation of the RSS in 1925. A very turbulent and a very awkward kind of a relationship, which, of course, the RSS and the uh, other affiliates of the RSS at the moment, including the BJP, are trying to actually negate the contentious relationship. They are trying to erase and trying to appropriate Gandhiji into their own iconic, list of their icons. So, if I ask you, how would you open by saying, that the 4 decades were marked by these things? What was the nature of the relationship between Mahatma Gandhi and RSS?
Since Nilanjan, you mentioned the meeting between Bapu and Savarkar in London, I would
That's right.
like to begin with that. It was after that meeting on his journey back uh, to South Africa that he wrote Hind Swaraj in a
That's right.
kind of what he called a diarrhea of ideas. And he wrote it at one stretch throughout the
Return
voyage
journey.
of the ship.
Mm.
And interestingly, the manuscript was written both by his right and left hand. So he continued to write. When the right hand got tired, he
Tired.
wrote with the left hand. It is a kind of a dialogue between uh, two people, Bapu and another imagined person. And many analysts have suggested that the protagonist in that, the other voice in that, is that of Savarkar, that was triggered by their meeting in London. And that dialogue is between them. Some have said that it is a dialogue between Mohandas and his inner voice that he began to hear louder and louder over that time. There is a debate about that, but it is a fact that that meeting in London seemed to have provoked that whole thought process in Bapu. And one of the things that he keeps reiterating in Hind Swaraj is about inclusiveness and equality. And that you see after post independence, you see exactly that being enshrined in our constitution. So
Right.
that had a very profound effect on him, and he realized that the forces that Savarkar represented were a bigger threat to India than even the colonizers, because he
Mm-hmm.
realized that, with the colonizers we will be able to defeat them sometime or the other, because this is India is not their home. They
Mm.
still consider a home away from it.
Right.
But this ideology of hate, this ideology of suppression, this ideology of segregation is the true danger to India, even after it achieves its freedom. And that is what he starts voicing from that time onwards. Even in South Africa, his work is of inclusive. Although he fights the colonial government, he doesn't treat them as enemies.
Mm.
He just treats them as somebody who misguidedly practice injustice and inequality, and tries to reform them also over there. And that continues when he's back in India, because he realizes that India can only be India if it is united, if it is equal, and if it is just.
Mhm.
Any other influence in India will be harmful to it. And last 2 or 3 decades, we are seeing what this exclusivist ideology is doing to India. And so, when you start with Bapu and you go beyond the time when he came to India and actually started
Mm.
influencing the movement in India, I think the realization of what was necessary for India had struck him right then when he met the other ideological process in London, and realized that this
Is
I
not
have
going
to
to.
fight. This no, he realized that he had to fight that. He had to fight that ideology, and he also realized that it would be easier to defeat the British, but that school of thought would be
Is going
much
to be
more
more difficult.
difficult to counter.
Let me
And that
before.
is that thought, that idea of Savarkar was what
Mm.
gave rise to Hindu Mahasabha and then RSS. And we see what that is doing to the India
At the
that
moment.
we have cherished for so long.
Tushar, you use the word inclusive and also exclusivist for the for Savarkar and the others in the RSS. Now, quite often, people use this word inclusive, that the inclusive vision of Gandhiji, without really being able to understand what this inclusive, vision was of Gandhiji, and which actually became the defining, perspective also of the national movement. Can you explain what is this
Yeah,
inclusion?
I will go back to the Hindu ideology,
Right.
which enshrines inclusiveness in the phrase Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, where all of humankind is
Mhm.
considered to be one family. That
Right.
is the inclusiveness which ensured that despite invaders, despite rulers of other religion, the Hindu way of life survived because it accepted and adjusted. And now we are seeing that when that acceptance and the habit of adjusting to circumstances is being considered to be a weakness, you see the dangers that that spouts
Mm.
to the nation as well as its people. And that is what I mean, and what Bapu meant when he talked about inclusivity. He said, it is our tradition to consider all of mankind, humankind, to be one family. And in
Mm.
one family, there cannot be hierarchies, there cannot be layers, there cannot be choices that we will accept only these people as family and not those kind of
Mm.
thing, which is being done today, where politically the others are getting a distinct identity and getting more and more populated day by day as per the political necessity of the political wing of the RSS, the BJP.
Mm. Right. You were talking about the natural, divergence between the visions of Gandhiji and the entire what we understand as the Hindu majoritarian groups, be it the Hindu Mahasabha or the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh and its affiliates. Very well. I was just reading up, prior to getting ready to interview you. I came across this very quaint headline, which was put up by the organizer. Organizer, as you know, is the weekly,
Yes.
official organ of the RSS in English. They have a separate Hindi organ
Hmm.
also called Panjanya. Now, this headline was Mahatma Gandhi and Sangh, a tale of civility and mutual respect. Now, obviously, there was no mutual respect between from the RSS side or the Sangh side to Gandhiji, and from Gandhiji to, I do not know that whether he really respected them in the quote unquote the ideological sense of the word. He was too polite a person not to be impolite with anybody. That is why he kept on going to the RSS, shakhas, to go and look at their camps, to interact with their leaders, to understand that if they were changing and if they had in any way becoming inclusive or not. But why do you think is there so much of pressure on today's Sangh Parivar, the Hindu majoritarian organizations, to say that there was mutual respect between them and Gandhiji?
I think they see the last 78 years. If you see, the RSS has carried out two streams of campaign.
Mhm.
One stream of campaign pushes out justifications for Gandhi's murder and why it was required,
Mhm.
and the deification of his murderer Godse. And Nilanjan, I am using the term murder and murderers because
Yes.
I I believe that it was a murder. It was, assassination sort of gives it a, a kind of justification that, oh yes, there was
Mhm.
a irreconcilable difference and that's what it happened. This was plain simple murder because they a danger to them, and that's why they got him murdered. And that has been the tradition of the RSS, and it hasn't stopped even now. We don't have
Mhm.
to stop with Bapu. It has gone on with Dabolkar and Pansare and Kalburgi and Gauri Lankesh. That ideological murder as a weapon of suppression is the RSS's creed. We must
Mhm.
understand that, and so we have to speak in that term also. So the respect was from neither, because Bapu also understood that they were a danger, but Bapu was
Mhm.
too civil to abuse them.
Mhm.
They, in their own way, were abusive of Gandhi. And if you read what Ramchandra Guha has written, quoting from the organizer also, there is a wonderful article online by Ram Guha, which was published. I don't remember the publication, but was published titled Gandhi and the RSS, which
Mhm.
quotes the kind of vitriolic and masked threats that RSS leaders made against Bapu even while he was alive. So
Mhm.
the fact that they claim that there was a mutual admiration for each other is humbug, as humbug as the Hindu Khatre Mein Hai myth that RSS has very successfully created and foisted on all of us. And
Right.
so we must be very clear. Bapu visited RSS, one of their shibers, only once. It wasn't as if he was a frequent visitor to their shakas and
Right.
things. He went there once because there was a lot of insistence, "Okay, you come and see it." And that was the time when the RSS was sending its stormtroopers to disrupt Bapu's Sarvadharma Pratna.
This
And
was in
Bapu,
47 you are talking
yeah,
about.
yeah.
Right.
46,
But there was
47
once,
was the period.
yeah, there was another period long ago, in 1936, when he went to an RSS camp. That is what also said, just went to see.
But that was, you see, if you look at it that way, then on his way back from the Roundtable Conference, because he came via Italy, he
Hmm.
was taken to one of Mussolini's black shirt parades and
Right.
made to watch their
Okay.
march past and everything. And as you said, he was too polite to refuse that. So
Right.
he went over there. But the telling thing is that in 47, after the partition, when the
Hmm.
refugee transfers were happening and the plight of the refugees was known to India, Bapu
Hmm.
had sent Sushila Nair for refugee relief across the border to
Right.
ensure that the refugees who were made to flee Pakistan were
Hmm.
at least protected and looked after while they attempted the crossing or while they waited to cross over. And
Hmm.
she had gone to one of the refugee camps in Punjab at that time, and she came back and reported to Bapu, and she was praising the RSS, saying, "Oh, they were there providing excellent relief work in the camps and things." And Bapu cautioned her. He
Hmm.
said, "Please don't get swayed. Their motive is evil. They are doing this to gain acceptance. It is not out of uh, the feeling of sympathy and the attempt to bring relief. It is indoctrination in practice, and they are spreading their message of hate by gaining acceptability by helping these people in distress. So we should not get carried away by that." So that his true feelings for the RSS emerge from those kind of instances, which are reported and recorded by Pyarelal
Hmm.
in his last phase, and by Sushila Nair also in her diaries. And so we must understand the fact that although he he didn't go hammer and tongs after the RSS, he did caution everybody time and again, beware of these people.
Hmm.
They are not the right people. They are not what they want us to believe they are. And that was the refrain throughout.
Right. You just referred to what Pyarilal Gandhiji's secretary wrote about. There is actually a reference which keeps on coming quite often, especially in the context of what I said, the 1936 visit. And then in 1947, there is a reference which many academics have also written in their books, and I have not been able to check out the primary source, I
Hmm.
must confess. So they say that somebody who was part of Gandhiji's group, his
Yeah.
supporters or his close admirers, pointed out the extent of the organizational capacity of the RSS, somehow indicating that that was a positive trait to be able to run such a powerful and a wide network, a sanghatan, as they say. But then Gandhiji, apparently, as Parallel wrote, he retorted by saying, "But even Hitler's party was very well organized. That so were the Nazis." Now, in which context does this actually certainly refer to the Hitler and the Nazi party? How does that reference come about?
I
Did
think
Gandhiji in any way allude
this is,
that?
again, I will say, this goes back to his experience with Savarkar in London and that
Mhm.
group, though that group of people. He had realized the danger they foretold for
Hmm.
the idea of India that he was nurturing, that he wished, the Ram Rajya that he wished to establish in independent India,
Hmm.
and also his experience, his international experience of racism in South Africa, what he saw, the till then fair play British
Hmm.
to the local Zulu tribes and the native Africans in South Africa. He saw all that, what radicalism could do to a people, how they could change by that. Because
Hmm.
he believed very strongly till Jallianwala Bagh, he believed that the British were the fairest and the gentlemanly of all people, and they would not play foul. But post that, and post the Bantu uprising in South Africa,
Hmm.
Bapu realized that no, this was not true. They could be as bad as everybody else. Then he watched Hitler's rise in Europe. He
Okay.
saw closely what Mussolini was doing. And then he saw the resemblance to the Nazis and the fascists in the RSS and the Hindu Mahasabha and the Kedas. And also, Nilanjan, I must also remind you that during Bapu's time, one of the primary organizations of outreach and grassroots activism was the Sevadal wing of the Congress.
Right.
Sevadal was the cadre, disciplined cadre based uh, affiliate of Congress, which reached out to the common people in the villages. And if you study the history of Sevadal, it
Hmm.
was very regimented, it was very dedicated. Every time there was a satyagraha launched, the forward troops were always the Sevadal cadre. And the Sevadal cadre reached out to the community wherever they were. And each community, each town, each village, each hamlet trusted their local Sevadal person to get whatever they required to be done for them. RSS stole that blueprint and created its own organization out of that blueprint idea of the Sevadal. And if you look at it, the
Hmm.
RSS thrived, and because the Congress post independence neglected Sevadal and allowed it to, remain as a unit that was there only to do the flag hoisting and
Hmm.
greet their big leaders and things. You saw how the Congress lost its touch with the grassroots and things. And so we must understand that Bapu did not need to be inspired by the organizational structure of the RSS nor by its discipline, because he had seen that discipline in the British troops in South Africa, he had seen that discipline in the Nazis in Europe, he had seen that discipline in the fascists of Europe, and then he saw the same discipline in the RSS,
No, no.
which was not in Sevadal. The discipline was tempered with a very overpowering sense of service and humility. RSS did that service with an arrogance. Every time they served the people, they would stand up and shout from the rooftops, "We are serving you, we are serving you, applaud us,"
Right.
which the Prime Minister does even today. For every little bit, he stands up and says, "Hey, applaud me, I did this for you." That
Hmm.
is the RSS ideology and mentality, where they will, in Hindi, there is a very good proverb saying, uh, they'll put 5 paise ka masala and claim 1 rupee ka taste.
Hmm. I actually, this, being reminded about the organizational capacity of the RSS, and then Gandhiji retorting by reminding that even the Nazis were very well organized. This came to my mind when there was this recent comment by a senior Congress leader, who had also been the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh at
Yes.
some time, Mr. Digvijay Singh, who said, that you have to admire the RSS's organizational capacity, saying that is something which is really unique. Even though fact, as you pointed out, that Sevadal, Congress is forgetting its own heritage. What it was. Congress, Sevadal was very much
Unfortunately,
part of that.
Nilanjan, unfortunately, present day Congress, there are lots of leaders of the Congress who suffer from RSS envy because the RSS stole a lot of ground from under their feet. And the generation of Digvijaya Singh and them who had seen
Hmm.
the heydays of the Congress. They had seen the influence that it wielded, and it are now presently seeing the kind of rejection that they are facing. They've all now started suffering from RSS envy instead of realizing and reinvigorating the latent heritage of the Congress and reviving that source of power. They now
Hmm.
just bemoan the ground that the RSS so efficiently stole from under their feet. And so the sense of standing up to them has
Right.
been replaced by saying, oh, look at how strong they are
How
because they're
how strong they
disciplined.
are. So we got to become a bit like them. That is what
No,
is the basic
I
suggestion.
think we don't need to become a bit like them.
No,
I
that
think
is
we
what is
need to
their
go back
suggestion.
to our heritage of
Yeah.
pre-independence, the kind of commitment. You see, the thing that is, if we were to talk about the Congress and compare them to the RSS guy, the only thing that is admirable of the RSS cadre is that they are not loyal to the Sarg Sangha Chalak per se. It is the title that they are loyal to. It is the
Not an
organization that they
individual.
are loyal to. Whereas in the Congress, now the loyalty is to the regional leader. And that is where
Mm.
you see that when the leader switches sides, the party moves with them. The
Mm.
party worker has been so vitiated that they have
Mm.
forgotten that they are Congress people. At one time, there used to be Congress people, the Congress Jan, who didn't bother about who was leading the Congress. They didn't bother
Mm.
about who was the Congress president. They believed that there was an organization to which they were affiliated and their loyalty was only to that organization. And that was the time when
Right.
the Congress was undefeated and undefeatable.
Right. There 2 years ago, in fact, 3 years, in fact, 2023 is the time, when there was a series of, reports regarding various letters of apology which V D Savarkar wrote to the British during the time that he was interned in Andaman and Nicobar in the cellular jail there.
Yes.
At that point, there were also references to, the RSS side. It was said, RSS Hindu Mahasabha side. People who wanted to defend Savarkar also said, look, even Gandhi actually stood up for, supported Savarkar, and in fact advised him that you must write letters to the British. How do you look at this entire controversy
It's
which came
very
up there?
amusing, when they cook up stories, they don't even bother to go into the ground realities of that time. They claim that Bapu wrote a letter advising Savarkar to ask for clemency and things.
That's,
Even if we were to accept that fact, would the British, who had put Savarkar under Kalapani to
hmm,
isolate him, allow him to have a correspondence with another troublemaker who was creating
hmm.
trouble for them in another colony of theirs? It
No, by 1920,
it
he had started creating trouble within British India.
with India also. But
Yeah.
this letter that they claim to that Bapu wrote was, I believe, sometime in 1911 or 9 or 11, while he was still in South Africa. And when
Mhm.
that phase, the last phase of the Satyagraha in South Africa was at its peak. It was, I believe, they claim that it was that time then when he established a channel of communication with Savarkar in Kalapani and
Those are
advised him to ask for clemency. He may have made a public statement because we must realize that clemency was the right of the prisoner.
that's
Every
right.
prisoner had the right to ask for clemency. But we
Yes.
must also understand that along with Savarkar, non criminal freedom fighters were also incarcerated in Kalapani, in the Andaman cellular jail, and none of them wrote letters of clemency. It was this
Right.
only
That is very
one man
important.
who wrote repeatedly to the British. The RSS, the fun part of the RSS is they don't challenge the fact that Savarkar wrote letters of clemency and made deals of good behavior, gave guarantee of good behavior and things to get out of Kalapani. They keep pointing out, oh, Gandhi advised him to do that. Oh, somebody else. Oh, maybe while he was the bulbul who was secretly flying back to the mainland, he crow came and chirped in his ear. Okay. There was this theory also that he used to turn into a bulbul and fly to India
Hmm.
and keep check
True.
of what was happening and all that. So
Yes.
I don't know where maybe a crew influenced him to do that. I don't know. But it's pathetic. We must also realize that there is a sinister conspiracy in doing this. They are pushing the envelope of sanity. They are
Hmm.
testing the ground. How much of bullshit can we get people to accept? And every
Right.
time they raise the quotient to see how much more they can get away with. And what I'm now beginning to realize is the danger is not the ideology of hate and the propaganda of hate that RSS practices. The danger is how successful they are at dumbing the Indian populace, how
That's
successful they are into turning a whole population into a bunch of idiots. And that they are
who
doing
believe everything,
successfully
which is
day
said by
after
them.
day after day. And all these things are part of that, and started in Mumbai with Ganpati's idol drinking milk,
Hmm.
where even scientists went and fed milk and created like theories of
True.
how that miracle was happening and all that. And I think that is where they started. They realized that unless we create a nation of idiots, we are not going to be able to succeed in our in grabbing power and keeping it with ourselves.
True, true. Now, Tushar, let's move to, possibly the last and the concluding part of our conversation,
Sure.
the hatred for Gandhi. You know, let me try to understand where exactly did this idea that Gandhi has to be killed, where did it actually surface and when? That is most important. I
The
would like to
known
know from you.
Nilanjan, the known attempt in 1934, which was the
Yes.
first recorded attempt on Bapu's life in India, was in Pune when
Hmm.
a hand grenade was hurled at what the whoever the assassin at that time was, who believed that the car carrying Bapu had arrived at the auditorium, and the hand grenade fell on the bonnet of the car and bounced off and then exploded in the middle of the street. And some policemen and some of the organizers were injured, but Bapu was in the car following that car, and his car was shielded by the first car, and so they escaped unhurt from that. Now,
Hmm.
if that is the first, and since then, all the registered, recorded attempt on his life somewhere or the other had people and organizations and groups from Pune associated with those attacks.
Hmm.
You must understand that in 1934 there was no question of Pakistan, there was no question of partition, there was no question of population transfer, there was
Hmm.
no question of 55 crores being given to Pakistan. The only
Pakistan.
thing that was happening at that time was his experiment of social engineering, his Harijan Yatras, where he was going and forcing open the doors of temples and opening, giving access to the untouchables to the village water sources. That was what he had embarked upon, and that is when the first attack on his life started. And since then, there was a very vocal, loud group of anti Gandhi people who carried out a campaign of hate against him, who carried out a campaign of abuse against him, and all of them were Savarkarites and later on RSS cadre. And
But
that
is this
campaign continued right up to 48 when finally they managed to kill
finally
him.
the
So,
assassin?
my theory is that Pakistan, Muslims, 55 crores, partition, all that provided a convenient excuse to justify the murder that they had been attempting to bring about right from 1.5 decades before they succeeded.
But why in 1934 would they want to murder Mahatma
Because he
Gandhi?
had embarked on the Harijan Yatra, which angered the Sanatani Hindus,
But
where
is this
the
is
supremacy was being challenged, the supremacy that held sway over Indian society, where the Dalits had also
right?
accepted their fate and would behave according to the expected norms without voicing their anger against that unjustified discrimination. That mentality had been challenged and was being broken. I'll give you an example.
Hmm.
In when he came back from South Africa in his Kochrab ashram, he defied
Hmm.
his ashram community and the community of Ahmedabad by admitting an untouchable family to come and live with them. It sparked
Hmm.
off a rebellion in the ashram family as well as a boycott from the Ahmedabad community. He carried it on and he moved his ashram across the river to Sabarmati. He said, okay, the city doesn't want me. We will live according to our norms across the river, far away from the city. So he continued that ashram. Then he established the ashram schools,
Hmm.
which were open to all castes and communities. And when the upper castes who were funding that school said, we won't allow Harijan children, the Dalit children, to sit in the same classroom as our children. He said,
Hmm.
welcome to take your children out if you want. But the
Our
Harijan
schools will
untouchable
remain like
children
this.
will sit in the class. And finally, he got his way on that also. So he had started rubbing the Sanatani Hindu in the wrong way, according to the Sanatani Hindu ideals. And so there was a resentment that kept growing. And amongst the Maharashtra Brahmins, there was also a resentment because they thought that what was naturally their right was being snatched away by the Congress and, in particular, Gandhi, because they believed that the Peshwas were the last rulers of India whom the British defeated and established their Raj. So when the British left, they would hand it over to the Peshwas, the Brahmins, who will
Hmm.
then rule India. And equality based egalitarian movement of the Congress that Gandhi spearheaded challenged that belief
Hmm.
of the Brahmins. And so both of these things gave, were the sparks that created the anti Gandhi fire, which resulted in his murder in 1948.
Right. Let's look at Godse and the RSS. Right from the time of the murder of Mahatma Gandhi, the RSS said that he had nothing to do with us. He had, parted with us long ago, and he was possibly part of somehow connected with the Hindu Mahasabha. And we do not have anything to do with Hindu Mahasabha.
Right.
So this entire thing is Godse, Hindu Mahasabha, and the RSS. They are presented as three different corners of a triangle. Do you think that they are three different corners, or would you say that they are actually part of the same body of thinking?
They are a part of the same body of fanatic, radical, violent haters. I will
Mhm.
use all these terms because they are the best descriptions of that ideology. And they are clever enough to have possible deniabilities in eventual. And forget about Gandhi. I gave an example of the Dabholkar, Pansare, Kalburgi, and Gauri Lankesh.
Right.
The RSS has very conveniently had deniability in that also. They have very cleverly washed their hands off the Sanatan Bharat movement or the fanatic
Yes.
wing in Goa that has been accused of it. But the fact is, they come from the same seed. They are sprouts of the same seed, and that can never be denied. If you just keep it at the Godse angle, then
Mm.
maybe Nathuram, in his court defense, claimed that Savarkar had nothing to do with it, nobody else had anything to do with it. He
Mm.
was the only perpetrator of the crime. But his brother, a co accused, Gopal Godse, in all his memoirs, has clearly stated that it was not only Nathuram who was a member of the RSS, but the entire Godse family were proud members of the RSS before and after Gandhi's murder. RSS doesn't have a system of membership. I visit their
Right.
Shaka once and they'll claim I'm a RSS person.
Yes.
They don't give me a receipt.
It
They
does
don't
not
ask
have
for
a
an annual
formal
contribution.
existence.
Yeah, there is no identity card to show that I am a RSS member. So there is no record of me being expelled from the RSS or me sending in a resignation to the RSS.
Mm.
So if that is the criteria, then Godse is a RSS member, and RSS cannot wash its hands off. But having said that, I will say that even at the time of Gandhi's murder, there were elements that were sympathetic to the RSS within the Congress. Rahul Gandhi recently claimed in Gujarat that
Mm.
there were sleeper cells in the Congress who were actually RSS sympathizers or RSS people.
Mm.
That was true in Bapu's time also. And post Bapu's murder, those were the people who influenced that RSS had been punished enough and that they should now be let alone. We should not go after them and all that. And those were the people who ensured that the RSS was able to capture the mainstream even later on. Even when Indira Gandhi was a strong Congress leader, she had a whole bunch of RSS people masquerading as congressmen. And that tradition has continued even right up to the time when Rahul is so vociferously campaigning against the RSS. There is a cell in the Congress that negates everything that he does.
Right, and even when Indira Gandhi was the prime minister, the postage stamp with Savarkar's face on it, was issued
Yeah.
by the government at that
It was
time.
issued by the
And
government because at that time Indira Gandhi required the RSS to check the Jansang. And they
yes,
did. They obliged her.
so so we now come to a situation where the RSS, thinking of the RSS, if not in the actual planning and execution, was involved in the assassination or the murder of Gandhiji. But we have now come to a time, when the present leadership, present organizations of the Sangh Parivar cannot say bad things, anything which is critical of Gandhiji. And in fact, they have completely appropriated him, although using, as many people say, Gandhiji's image just as a symbol, of the government, and not really following any of his preachings in practice as far as the government goes. So, how long do you think that this duality will continue, or do you think that the time has come where the BJP and the RSS can actually say that we do not really need to own up Gandhi any longer?
I think, Nilanjan, the idea and the plan or the conspiracy is to finally present Gandhi in the RSS half pant. And that is being done by the remodeling that is being done under the Prime Minister's supervision of Sabarmati Ashram. You will see that the pale version of Gandhi in khaki will be showcased in that new Sabarmati ashram that Narendra Modi is building now. And that is the sinister plan that one fine day they will convince the Indian millions that not Golwalkar, Gandhi was the founder and patron of RSS or product of RSS.
Well, that's quite a scary thought that you actually raise, and we hope that it will not come true. On this note, I will thank you and conclude this program. I hope that we have been able to understand a clear understanding and the relationship between Gandhiji and the RSS, Hindu Mahasabha, and the entire affiliated organizations of the Hindu majoritarian forces. Thank you so much, Tushar Gandhi.
Thank you so very much.